Do I have a problem with Starry Starry Night? Maybe. Do we care? No, we do not. Hi there and welcome to my March book wrap. I can't believe it's April already. It seems just 2 weeks ago that we were in April 2020. I'm still worrying about how the coronavirus pandemic was going to unfold. A year on, I feel like we still don't quite know how it's going to unfold, but we're slowly but surely getting there. Certainly here in the UK, they're doing pretty well with the vaccine rollout, which means that I'm slightly more confident about leaving my house. But I'm not yet been vaccinated, so hopefully one day I'll be vaccinated and then I'll feel confident about hopping on a train again to see some beloved friends and family. So with this previous few months of lockdown, it's been great because I've been able to focus on reading and focus on writing and my hobbies. I've also been on leave for the past 10 days, so it's been really great to unwind a bit. I've spent quite a lot of those 10 days reading and some of the other parts of it binge watching MasterChef and sewing the hand-finished seams on my Edwardian walking skirt, which might partially be influenced by YouTubers like Bernadette Banner, who is friggin' amazing. Today's hair and makeup look brought to you by obsessively watching Rachel Maxey. What can I say? These things. So anyway, what did I get to read in March? Well, I read 6 books, which is a pretty good record for me. There were 2 rereads in that pile, and both of them from many years ago, so I'm coming at them from quite a different perspective. And 2 of the books that I read were audiobooks, which is also great. I can't get enough of audiobooks because they mean that I don't get sucked into doing boring chores by themselves. I can listen to an audiobook while I'm hanging the laundry or doing the dishes or sweeping the whole bloody flat, and I don't know why it gets so dusty, but it does. So just now I'm going to listen to the one that I'm currently listening to and sweep the kitchen again. First book that I read in March, or first book that I finished in March, was the wonderful novel Americano by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, who is a prominent Nigerian author. She's very cool. I have a good friend who, when we were working together at the company I used to work at, we used to have dress-up days, which was quite a lot of fun. And one dress-up day theme was movers and shakers, and this incredible friend of mine came as Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. So if you haven't ever watched her essay on feminism, I highly recommend that. Her other novels that I've read include Half of the Yellow Sun, which I actually taught at a first year level when I was a baby university teacher. Really loved that as well, even though it was quite a lot. It's very heavy because of its subject matter. But yeah, Americanah, first published in 2013, so actually quite an old book now. There was a phase that it was going to possibly be adapted for TV or for a movie, but that's fallen through because of scheduling reasons. The story is told as a series of flashbacks and flash forwards to the present day between a character called Ifemelu, who is an incredible writer who goes to the USA to study, and her boyfriend from Nigeria, Obinze, who has a bit of a more fraught challenge with going overseas. He comes to the UK, but then ends up getting deported because he's been working with somebody else's NI number. And it catalogues their experience. Their romance is a bit fraught because of the global stage on which it has to play out. So some of the core themes in Americana include race, particularly because Ifemelu, when she's in the States, has to navigate what it means to be a non-American black. And she writes this incredible blog which is pieced through the book, so you get hints of this blog that she's written, and I really, really enjoyed those sections. So she talks about being a non-American black in a country that is very race conscious, and she highlights that this is very different to how she was brought up, because in Nigeria being black is the norm, so you don't see race in quite the same way. Another theme that's dealt with in this book is what it means to be an immigrant and be outside society. particularly if it's a society that you've had held up to you as an example. So for lots of places around the world that are ex-colonies, there's a big sense that going to places like the UK or the US is kind of a goal to aspire to, because those are the lands of milk and honey, and like those are the center and you're at the periphery, and moving from the periphery to the center is a big deal. And you can see that in both the main characters' stories, that Ifemelu and Obinze both are desperate to move away from Nigeria, move away from the home that they've known and what they perceive as a second-class life, and then go and live in the US or in the UK. I bookmarked a whole lot of little audio snippets because I read this as an audiobook, and some of the ones that I bookmarked and had a little wry chuckle at were things like the veneration of the BBC, because in my family that's also a thing that, you know, the BBC can do no wrong, so BBC World Service is an incredible service, and the fact that that was a parallel from my experience of growing up in South Africa to theirs in Nigeria, that was quite funny for me. Obviously this book's got a lot of critical acclaim. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie is an incredible author. Some things I loved about this book, I really loved the blogs. Seeing that sort of step back from the narrative and its process of unpacking and holding up a mirror to society in the form of a sort of social commentary blog was great. It changed the texture quite a lot, and I know that some reviewers really didn't like this initially, so I thought they were great. The wow moments for me include reading the reflections on race, particularly those that are about race in America, because this was published in 2013, so shortly after Obama came to power, and it's kind of really funny and weird and a little disheartening, because so many of the conversations that Ifemelu has with her progressive friends, like in the States, her boyfriend is a black guy who's from America, so there's a difference in their perception of race. And so many of the conversations they have, or she has, with Kurt, her ex, who was a white guy, like surfer dude kind of guy, about like not seeing race and, oh, I don't see race at all. Sometimes feels like things haven't changed, and like I know that the world became a lot more conscious about race again last year with Black Lives Matter, and it seems like feels like there's a long way to go, because if these issues were well known about in 2013 when this book was published, it seems frustrating to me that things haven't changed. I also found this book quite challenging at times to read because of the passages when Ifemelu arrives in the States. She arrives into a cold, dark winter. She feels very isolated. She feels like she's struggling to get into life there and make ends meet, and she ends up getting depression. It's partially seasonal depression and partially just life's really hard as an immigrant depression, which is dealt with really well, but I found it really difficult because at the time I was reading it, I was feeling very cooped in my flat, and there's a sense that she is unsure when she's ever going to see her parents again, and I know that it's only been a year and a bit since I last saw mine, but I feel strongly that, you know, I miss them and I'd love to see them, but traveling at the moment is just not a thing. So anyway, that was a challenge. The second book I read, which I read on my new Kindle, yay! Actually read it on my phone, but this is my new Kindle. Do I have a problem with Starry Starry Night? Maybe. Do we care? No, we do not. So, my Kindle has finally arrived. Because of reasons, it got sent to London and was going to be my Christmas present, and then our Christmas got cancelled, so I only saw my sister on Saturday for the first time since Christmas, and she brought it up, and now I have my Kindle and I'm so excited, and I immediately bought the Starry Starry Night case. So, book 2 that I read was The Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. This was a reread. It was published in 1995. I read it for the first time when I was about 17, so pretty much 10 years ago, maybe a bit longer. It's book 1 of the Farseer trilogy, which is the first of her trilogy set in the realm of the Elderlings. Boy, is it better than I remember, and I remember it being good. So I'm super enjoying the reread of this trilogy. I'm very excited to continue reading all the books in the series, as long as there are books in the series for me to read. I think, I'll double check this, but the trilogies or series in this set in this location tracking the similar characters include the Farseer trilogy, the Ship of Magic trilogy, Tawny Man, the Rain Wild Chronicles, and Fitz and the Fool. The wonderful thing about this being a reread is that I keep having, oh no, hold on, doesn't this character turn out to be a total and utter bastard? And then 4 or 8 chapters later, sure enough, the character is a bastard. I really, really enjoy the attention to the world building, attention to characterization. I think that Robin Hobb is an absolute genius at characterization. This is kind of, I know that some people don't like the books she's written because she offers her protagonist some victory and then she snatches it away, and that happens repeatedly. So I'm interested to find out if that goes through the other trilogies in or the other series in the realm. We'll have to see. Book 3 that I read is Warriors of Alavna by N.M. Browne. It's a middle grade novel that I read when I was in late junior school, so I must have been about 12 or 13. It tells the story of two school-aged people who get magically transported from the year 2000 back to the year 76 Common Era, all the way back to Roman Britain, or as actually the case is, Celtic Britain. So it tells the story of Dan and Ursula, and they become members of the Cambrogi tribe, which is a Celtic tribe fighting against the Romans, who in this book are represented by ravens. So, you know, this is a bit of a parallel world, because in actual Roman law and Roman mythology, the SPQR was always an eagle, so you got the ravens, which are kind of like a dark Romans. I really loved the fact that N.M. Browne wastes no bloody time in getting going with the plot. It's quite an interesting book in terms of modern ideas about, or current ideas about, gender identity, because Ursula, who's the female character, is magical. She possesses some magic that she can use, and because she doesn't want to be seen and perceived as a woman, she magics herself into a man. Like, she actually becomes a man, but she retains her identity as Ursula. So there's kind of an interesting, like, non-binary angle to this whole thing, because she physically changes her body, like she physically grows stubble and appendages, but then it turns out that she can shapeshift, so she can shapeshift back into a female form when she needs to. So really interesting. I didn't appreciate that at all when I was reading it when I was 15, but yeah, quite a good book, worth a read. There are more in this trilogy. I don't think this is the trilogy I was actually, or the series I was actually looking for when I was trying to think through what I'd read that was set in Roman Britain, but it's super interesting. Anyway, book 4 that I read was another audiobook. This time it was Keeper of Lost Things by Ruth Hogan, published in 2016. I know that it got quite a lot of acclaim on Goodreads. The Keeper of Lost Things is a feel-good story told in recollections across 2 main plot lines. There's the plot line of Boomer and Eunice, which is a slightly older plot line. It's got a little bit more history to it. And then there's the modern day plot line, which is Anthony Perdue, who was the original Keeper of Lost Things, and then eventually it becomes the story of Laura, Freddie and Summer. So I really loved how this book treated the snatches of backstory in the past, particularly through the lens of the lost things in the title. Anthony Perdue is a writer who bequeaths his house to Laura, his housekeeper, on the understanding that she maintains his collection and tries to return the lost things to those who lost them. So each of those lost items comes with some backstory. We don't know it all. We see flashes of how those items were lost sometimes, and occasionally flashes of how they're connected to their owners again. I really enjoyed the characterization of Summer. She's a Down syndrome 19-year-old, and she's got a very refreshing way of looking at the world. She also seems to have a bit of a magical realism skill with the lost things, that she can hold them or touch them, and then see some backstory about the object itself and its owner. So that was quite a cool storytelling device. What I didn't like as much in this novel was that the romance between Laura and Freddie is going to happen. You can see that coming a mile off. But towards the sort of 2/3 point in the book, there's kind of a bit of an explosion, and like it feels like a bit of a rom-com breakup, so that they can break up just to get back together. And I don't think that that adds anything to the book. I don't think that the romance B-plot part of the book is nearly as powerful as the author would hope. The second thing that wasn't my favorite in the book, that feels a little bit trite to me, was that Laura becomes a novelist and she carries on Anthony Perdue's job of telling the story of lost things, and with the help of Eunice, who worked as Boomer's assistant in the publishing business, you kind of feel like that's setting her up for success. It felt a little bit like the women's fiction version of the middle-aged literature professor having an affair with his students as the core of so many books, so many litfic books. So it seems a little bit sort of self-insertion-y. I'm probably being unfair, I don't know anything about Ruth Hogan, but yeah, wasn't my favourite. That's okay. Books 5 and 6 that I read were books 1 and 2 of Deborah Harkness's All Souls trilogy. The first was A Discovery of Witches, the second was The Shadow of Night. I'm very nearly finished the third in the trilogy. It's been a reading experience of a bit of a roller coaster, and I want to actually do a whole video on the trilogy and my reading process and my variation between quite strong emotions to do with the books. It's not been the most straightforward read, and it's not been the most enjoyable read, but I've stuck reading them because I'm stubborn. And yeah, now that I'm nearly finished book 3, I'm kind of glad to be finished and glad to read the next thing. But again, they count towards my reading goal of the year, so that's also not a bad thing. So that's that for my March reads. April's looking reasonable. I've nearly finished one book already, and I'm halfway through the second one of the Robin Hobb trilogy, and I've got another couple of books that I have on the go. I'm really keen to start. But I'm also really excited to get back into the library, to get back into a bookshop, to get back into charity shops, and keep buying stacks of books to keep around the house, much to my husband's horror and also to the horror of myself when I have to dust everything. It's been great to catch up. And have you read any of the books that I've read? Do you have strong feelings about them? You can let me know in the comments below. Bye!